Hello, welcome to Bumble Stitches episode 32. My name's Nicola. It's Sunday the 4th of November 2018 and you can find me on Instagram as Bumble Stitches. You can find me on YouTube here on the podcast as Bumble Stitches Podcast. You can also find me on Ravelry as Bumble Stitches, where we have a podcast group under the groups tab, also called Bumble Stitches, no surprises there. And I also have an Etsy shop called Bumble Stitches Store, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. It's only been 2 weeks since my last podcast, so I've surprised myself today by coming back to you so soon. There was a couple of very good reasons why I wanted to do that, and it just felt like a really good day. I felt very organised and ready to get another podcast out to you all today. So I hope you're all well. It's now November and the time is flying by. We're fully in the autumn sweater season, which is great. I think most of us knitters really like this time of year more than any other. It's the time for getting cosy and snuggling down with our knitting and good things on the TV, hopefully, or podcasts or whatever it is you like to do, and just generally get the coziness going on. Kind of a little bit of a relaxing time, I'm hoping, before we get the mad rush up to Christmas. So I'd like to welcome new viewers to the podcast. I've noticed there's been quite a few new subscribers lately, so thank you ever so much for subscribing to the podcast and spending some time with me. I really do appreciate it, and all the lovely viewers that keep coming back every episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you always come and spend some time with me. So the elephant in the room is my Engl sweater, which I spoke about extensively on the last episode, and it is done. So I guess I've jumped straight into finished objects because this is my finished object for this episode. So it's the Engl sweater by Caitlin Hunter. You can see it's got the colourwork yoke here. I'll just show you the pattern for those of you that aren't familiar. So there it is, Ingalls by Caitlin Hunter. Now this is designed for DK weight yarn, and those of you that have watched before will have heard the story, which I'll be brief about just to recap, that the yarn that I've got here, the navy blue, was originally an Andy Satterland cardigan, which I decided to frog because it just wasn't me, and it's sat in stash for quite a long time, and it's actually the Rowan, what is it, Rowan pure wool worsted is the yarn. So it was really nice to find a pattern that I wanted to use that yarn up on, and all I had to do was go and buy a contrast colour, which is again the Rowan pure wool worsted. So I thought these two went quite nicely together, and I hope you'll agree that I think they have actually worked really nicely for this sweater pattern. So the saga was that I've obviously changed the pattern from DK yarn to a worsted weight. I didn't swatch, which was a bit naughty. I was winging it a bit, and I just decided to go for it. And I worked out the yardage that I had, yardage or meterage that I had available in the frogged yarn, and then just matched it up to the largest size that I could get from the pattern. Started merrily knitting away and had a major panic thinking that I would not be able to complete the second sleeve. So I'd knitted all of the body, obviously the colourwork in this section was fine, knitted all of the body, knitted one sleeve, and then panicked before I was starting the second sleeve thinking that there was no way I was going to get it finished. Now the yarn, the colourway had been discontinued. So I did a bit of searching online, couldn't find it anywhere, and after mentioning it last episode, I had so many messages on Instagram, comments under the video with people being so helpful and looking for this yarn for me, and there were a couple of people that did actually find the colourway. So instead of being sensible, which is not my middle name, and going for it to see if I did have enough yarn to finish the sleeve, I bought the extra skein anyway because I really didn't want to have that panic. I thought, well, even if the dye lot isn't exact, I can sort of fade what I have into the new skein and it will be fine. So I ordered this and it came pretty quickly, which I was really pleased about, and it was in the UK, and that was a lovely daughter that found that, so thank you, you're an angel to have found that link for me. So the yarn came really quickly. Meanwhile, I started knitting the second sleeve. So, and you can guess, looking at this and looking at both sleeves done, what happened next. I did have enough yarn from the original amount that I had. So the sweater is completely knit in the same dye lot, which is great. So I didn't have to worry about any sort of change of dye lots on the sleeve. And all was well. So, okay, I've got this, but that's fine because I'm thinking that with the full skein of the blue and some of the contrast pink, I could make hat, I could make some colourwork mittens, something like that. So I'm really not worried. I would much rather have been in the position of having the fallback of having extra yarn to finish the sweater than not. So I'm really pleased it all turned out well in the end. So I'll pop those back in. I'm just going to try and show you the sweater a little bit more. So as you can see, it has got the colours blowing out a little bit on the on my phone, but you can see the colourwork yoke, which obviously goes all the way around, and it has got this lace sort of eyelet detail either side of the colourwork, and a little bit of detail in between, which on reflection I don't think really adds much to the design. I've knitted it sort of like hip length, really good fit, pleased with the yarn, and the sleeves were really a nice way of doing sleeves. You just knit them straight down and then do quite a sharp decrease just before the cuff, so you get almost like this sort of like puffed out bit over the top, but it makes for a really nice relaxed fit. And I like the way the neckline sits. The yarn blocked up beautifully. It did take an age to dry, but that was fine. I don't think it's something that you'd be washing too often. It is pure wool, so it won't as we all know, wool is a great fabric, and it doesn't, if you air it off afterwards, it's fine for a good few washes. So that is my Ingalls sweater by Caitlin Hunter, which is finally off the needles. It wasn't actually a long knit. If I'd have carried on knitting monogamously, it wouldn't have taken too long at all, but obviously there were a few little stops and starts. But I'm really pleased to have it as a finished object and a wearable sweater. I think I'll get a lot of use out of this in the winter time, because the weather has got quite a lot colder lately, and I hope I don't get too hot while I'm sitting in the house wearing a worsted weight wool jumper. So that's my finished object that I'm very pleased with. So I have to look out for some patterns now to utilise what I've got left here, and just to show you, this was what was left from the original quantity, so I was absolutely fine. There was really no need to panic. Okay, there was another finished object in the last 2 weeks since I podcast last, which is the test knit that I was speaking to you about last time. So that's all done, and it's a pattern by Libby Johnson, Truly Myrtle, a cardie, and I think it's going to be released on I think it's the 9th of November, so keep an eye out for that one, and then next podcast I'll be able to share that with you, and you can see what I've been up to. So I've got my notes down here, so I'm going to be checking back on those a little bit. Just have a little drink. I've gone for a cold drink today. I thought with the big jumper on and being in the house, a hot cup of tea might just be pushing my luck a little bit too much. Especially now I've got my fringe back. I don't know if you've noticed that I've had my hair cut and I've gone back. I always used to have a fringe, and then it's like you fancy change, so I grew it out and then decided that I wanted it put back in. But it's that adjustment period of getting used to having it sort of like all around your face again. So if I get a little bit hot and bothered, you just have to bear with me. Shall we move on to some works in progress? I've got a couple of things to share with you. The first one is very nearly it could have very nearly been a finished object, but I was not wanting to rush the bind off and the finishing off, and rather wait till it's all blocked and really pretty for when I share it with you next time. So this is the bag that I showed you last episode that daughter sent in, and there's another one which is a prize as well. So that's where this is living, and it's the Rewilding shawl, which is by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade. That was a gift to attendees of the Country House retreat, and it is on Ravelry now if you fancy knitting it. And it's fab because it's a one skein project, so really great for gift knitting if you've got some. We've all got lots of skeins, single skeins of yarn that it would look fab in. And I have actually finished the knitting, and I'm on the picot bind off. And as we all know, if you've ever done a picot bind off before, they do take time. And I know some people find them a bit fussy, but I think, in my opinion, I think they're well worth it, especially on a shawl like this. So I've just started doing the picot bind off last night. So literally only done the first little tiny bit, and I need to do the rest, which I'll probably do this afternoon or this evening. But the rest of the knitting is done. Let me just attempt to get it into some sort of order so I can show you. We are in a big old tangle now. Okay, so what's the right side? Talk among yourselves while I'm sorting this out. Here we go. So that's the edge. So it's a triangle garter stitch with the eyelet lace panel, and then it goes down to a garter border with the picot bind off, and then on the 3 points of the triangle, once it's blocked and dry, will be some tassels. And quite excited about the tassels because I really like the look of tassels on a shawl. I think they particularly make the points, you know, the shape more emphasized, which is really, really nice. And I love seeing them on projects, but I've never actually made any tassels before, so I'm really looking forward to doing those. I think once I've done the bind off and the shawl is blocking, I'll get making the tassels. And the good thing about the pattern is, I won't show you because it is a paid for pattern, but there is a section at the back that tells you how to make the tassels. I mean, you can look that up online anywhere, and I'm sure lots of you know how to do that already, but I thought it was really you know, good that the pattern includes that as well for you. This has been knit in yarn that was provided by the retreat sponsors, who are the Fibre Company, and it's their Meadow yarn in the bedstraw colourway, a lovely pearl grey, and it is a blend of baby llama, silk, linen and merino, and it's a lace weight, so there was actually 100 gram skein to start with, and that gave almost 500 meters, so quite a lot of yarn there. So there's plenty to make some really nice extravagant tassels to pop on the end, and I think that's going to be a really nice wearable shawl, especially in the colour, you know, the colour that I've used. I think I'll be able to wear that for work as well during the winter months, because it will just blend with lots and lots of sort of work outfits. So that's work in progress number one. I'm going to pop that down there. What is next? I have got a new sweater project on the needles. Once this was done and blocking, it sort of, I missed it. It was gone, and I really, really missed it. So I do like all the Caitlin Hunter patterns, and I actually was watching Christy Glass's recap of Rhinebeck, and she did a video that, if you haven't seen it, I would really recommend you watch, which is her Tell Me About Your Rhinebeck Sweater video. And if you don't know, she basically interviews lots of people at Rhinebeck that are all wearing their Rhinebeck sweaters, and they just tell her about it basically. So you just see lots and lots of lovely sweaters, lots of patterns that would be familiar to you from Instagram and Ravelry, and all the different colourways that people have used and different yarns, and it's really quite inspiring. And that was what made my mind up to go for the Tecumseh by Caitlin Hunter. Now this is living in my La Bien-Aimée bag that I got at the retreat. This is a lovely big size for a sweater project, and of course it's lined with the lovely yellow. and I'm going to show you the pattern in case you don't know it. So it's Tecumseh by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks. So it's got colour work all the way throughout the sweater, and I'll just see if I can show you another photograph so you can see the sort of three main bands, one up at the yoke, one at sort of like where you split for the sleeves, and one at the bottom. I really like this colourway that the designers used, but I fancied something a little bit different. And as I say, there were so many beautiful ones. This was a very popular pattern for the Rhinebeck sweaters, and lots of people in that video were wearing Tecumseh, and it was really nice to see how different they all looked. So I will show you my sweater, or part of a sweater, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the yarn that I'm using. Okay, it's at that awkward stage. Now this I have been knitting on like a bit of a demon. I cast it on today's Sunday. I cast it on Friday evening, and I have done the, obviously cast on, done the short row shaping at the back of the neck, done the first colour work here for the little plus signs, and then working down into the first repeat of the, I think they're supposed to replicate, I think they're supposed to be feathers, I think that's what they are, feathers or sort of shield shapes. But it's nice and simple because there's only ever two colours in each row, so you're not wrestling with lots and lots of different yarns. Obviously this was the same, only ever two colours, but the Birkin that I did by Caitlin Hunter has sometimes got three, and that is, if you're a bit of a colourwork newbie like I am, it's a little bit daunting to be managing three colours in one row. So nice and straightforward, and there's a little tiny feather on there. And because it's DK yarn, it is actually knitting up quite quickly. It's on 4mm needles, and I have got a really cute little white pumpkin progress keeper, and that was actually a gift from Jules, So Sweet Violet, at the Country House retreat last year. She gave everyone one of these really cute little pumpkin progress keepers, so I've popped that on there as well. So it's knitting up really well. I'm doing colour work the correct way, with by stranding at the back, not the way I did my Birkin, which I was kind of weaving everything in and wondering why it was sort of pulling so tight. So I'm learning, I'm getting better at colour work, and really enjoying this knit. It's a great knit. So the yarn, as I mentioned, is a DK, and that's what the pattern calls for. Now when I'm away for work, I do travel all around the UK, and after I've sorted out my appointments for work, the next priority is searching out local yarn shops. So last week I was in Shropshire and stayed overnight in Shrewsbury, and I had a little bit of spare time and found, well, I didn't find, it was already there, went to a lovely local yarn shop in Shrewsbury in the market hall in the town called You and Ply. Let me see if I can find, there might be a bit of paper bag rustling here. I'm just going to see if I can find their, so that's them, You and Ply, and they are in, it was a really lovely market actually. It was an indoor market with lots of, it was on two levels, and one sort of like the ground level was produce. There was all sorts of things, fruits and vegetables and meats and fish and cooked things, baked goods and all that kind of thing. And then there was a little gallery upstairs, and that's where You and Ply are. And there was obviously the yarn shop and all sorts of little sort of artisan sort of traders up in that level. So it's a really nice place. I didn't have a huge amount of time to explore it, but really glad that I went to You and Ply. Now the ladies there, Terry and Becca, were really helpful. I told them what I was knitting, and I'd worked out the yardage that I needed, and I chose their Shropshire Ply yarn, which I'm just going to get the skeins so I can show you it in the skein. So this is their Shropshire Ply DK yarn, and as you can see, it's quite a mix. It's 34% Welsh Mule, 28% Shropshire, and 20% Sherino, which is a crossbred sheep of Shetland and Merino, so Sherino, which I've not come across before. Well, neither have I the other fleeces in the blend. Oh, sorry, an 18% Blueface Leicester. So it's a really good mix of British breeds. It's all naturally dyed. This one is just the natural. This is called Bread and Cheese, this colourway, and that's obviously what I'm using for this part of the colour work. The rusty colour, which is my contrast number 2, is beautiful, and this is called Fusty Lugs, I think. It's handwritten. I don't know if I'm reading it right. I think it's called Fusty Lugs. So that's the second contrast, and the main colourway is dyed with indigo, and because the Terry and Becca had to fetch in they didn't have enough quantity actually in the market haul for the main body, because I needed 9 skeins, so they actually got me some more and made sure it all was from the same dye batch that they'd done, all naturally dyed, so that they were as close as can be, and they weren't actually labelled. So I'm not 100% sure of the colourway of this, but I think it might have been called Shropshire Blue, but I might have that wrong. But I thought it was such a stunning blue, and the other two colours really contrast nicely, and I thought it would make a really nice Tecumseh. And it was nice to have a chat with those ladies. They, as I said, they were really, really helpful, really knowledgeable and interested in what I was knitting, and it's nice to get something that I could only get from them, and they included a sheep breed that was local to their area and the area that I was visiting. So I just think it's, you know, it's yarn with a story, and it's going to be a sweater with a story, and I think that's really, you know, it makes things a little bit more special, especially the time that, you know, you spend knitting that particular project, and to know that there is a little bit of a background to it is really, really nice. This yarn is really bouncy, quite sort of stretchy, if you know what I mean, in a woolly way. It smells really woolly and sheepy, but I think it's going to, and it is soft. It's not merino silk soft, because it is obviously a bit more of a rustic blend, but it isn't a scratchy yarn. And I think once it's blocked, I mean, the fabric is knitting up really, really nicely. As you can see, the stitch definition is great, and I think it's going to block up and be a really lovely sweater when it's done. And it's actually quite light. It's quite, although there's a fair amount there, it hardly weighs anything. It feels really, really light. So that is my new work in progress that I'm really, really enjoying. I'm hoping to put at least get to the next part, finish this part of the colour work later on, and I think there's another increase after that, because this isn't so bad. This fits, I think, fits really nicely on the yoke, but the Birkin that I did by Caitlin Hunter, the colour work yoke, as beautiful as it is, the fit isn't right, and it tends to just keep wanting to go up. I don't think there are enough increases within the colourwork section. So that's Tecumseh, so keep an eye out for that hopefully being a finished object at some point in the very near future. And this quantity of yarn is the only acquisition that I've got since I saw you last, so, but very worthwhile acquisition. Pop those back. And since I've realised that sleeve knitting is fab for me on a 12-inch circular, I have not got any fear of getting to the sleeves on that. So I've got my Chiagu 4mm 12-inch circular needles ready for the sleeves. I'm going to pop this all back in here, ready for a nice cosy knit later on. And pop the pattern back. And I'm just going to have a little look. So where are we next? Flew Cozy cardigan hasn't really had a lot of love, mostly because I was getting this finished and then fell in love with Tecumseh and had to start knitting on that. So it's still pretty much where it was last time, so I won't bother getting that one out. Another new cast on that I have got to here is, I've popped it in one of my Christmassy bags, and this is a really lovely bag that I got from Betsy Makes. That's Sam. She's got the Betsy Makes podcast and also Etsy shop, and I just love these rose gold sparkly Christmas trees on the pink linen. And I know it isn't Christmas yet, but I just felt it was appropriate for this project. So what's in here is my snow day cowl. And I think I printed the pattern off last episode and shared it with you as a printed pattern. So it's the Snow Day Cowl by Becky Norman. And Bex is part of the Bird Box podcast with her sister Claire and brother-in-law John, which is a great podcast. If you haven't checked them out, I suggest that you do, because you also get to see all Mr. B's lovely yarns as well. And I have started, I've had a bit of cast-on-itis, haven't I? Let me just get this straight. So I have cast on my Snow Day cowl, got it on short circular, so you can see what I've done so far. And this is the section which I think Bex calls Deep Drifts. So basically the pattern is falling snowflakes, quite light at first, then getting heavier and then settling into deep drifts. And what I've decided to do is knit this as a fade from dark to light. Now, silly me, didn't read the pattern properly, and what I intended to do was have the deep drifts at the bottom and the bottom of the cowl go into the darker shades, but I didn't read it properly, and I started and I'd already done all the rib and halfway through here, and when I realised, so I thought, oh well, I'm not ripping it out, I'm sure it will work either way up. And all the yarns that I'm using are from leftovers from socks and from shawls. I'll show you some of the blues that I'm going to use so that you can see, and they're probably all going to go everywhere now. I'm going to have a big old tangle of blue yarns. So this is the darkest. I don't know if the camera's picking up the twinkle. This is a Sweet Georgia Cash Lux Spark, and this was a really expensive skein that I bought at Yarnporium a couple of years ago, so I knew I didn't want to waste any of it. I knitted a sock head hat out of it and kept this, and I think it'll be perfect for this cowl. Actually not far, it'll almost disappear on my jumper, it's almost the same blue. So that's the darkest. And then I think it's great fun as well when you can go through your stash and pull out all those leftovers from other projects and put them to use. It's really good. So then I've got this skein of Mr. B's, and I can't remember the colourway. It may be Urban Decay or Urban Decay 2, something like that. I use this in my So Faded sweater, the first one I did, the long sleeve one. So it'll be nice to get some of that into the cowl as well. And then I have various blues here. That's a little blue with stellina in, silver stellina, and quite pale one there. There's another one that's a little bit more turquoisey. And I can't remember this one. That might be Mr. B's as well. I think that was part of the fade with that one. And there's another blue here, which is a bit more of a baby blue with some darker little navy bits in. The one that I'm knitting with at the moment here, and this is called The Quiet, and it's by Yantan Tetherer, and I knitted my Christmas Eve cast on socks last year, and I knitted Danny's, I can't remember the name of it, the one with the little trees on the side. Mine's gone blank, but I knitted, oh, it's called 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, the one with the little Christmas trees on the side and the trunk that runs down the length of the foot, and that was the yarn I used for those. So that's going to good use. And then finally I have some just a natural yarn here, which again I can't remember, it might have been Wool Barn, it might have been one that I picked up at Loop, and I used it in my Villa wrap, which was part of one of Helen Stewart's Shawl Society shawls. So yeah, that combo of all these blues is going to be sort of faded from one end of the cowl to the next. I think it's going to be really, really pretty when it's done, and it's a nice enjoyable knit, especially just going round and round and round. Pattern's really well written. And the good news is, and I should have mentioned this last time, I completely forgot, but Becky has kindly offered a copy of the pattern for me to give away on the podcast today. So I will set up a thread in my Ravelry group, which is Bumble Stitches podcast group. If you're not already a member, do come and join us. You can find us by searching on the groups tab. I'll set up a thread, and I'm going to ask you what would be your ideal way to spend a snow day. And by that obviously we mean a day where school or work is cancelled because of the snow, and suddenly you find yourself with that lovely surprising extra day where you can just do what you want and stay cozy, or go out in the snow or whatever. So you tell me what that thing is that you'd like to do on your perfect snow day, and then next podcast we'll draw a winner, and I'll get Becky to send you a copy of her pattern. So thank you, Becky, that's really, really kind of you, and I'm loving mine, and it'd be great to give one away to one of the viewers, so thank you. The other whip I'm working on at the moment is my Strictly socks, but my sock mojo has really just run out. I went great guns. I was sharing my box of socks most episodes. I think I got 10 pairs done by sort of August. I was really, really on a roll with it. Oh, these yarns are in a terrible tangle now. Yeah, and Sock Mojo's just gone. I think Sweater Knitting Mojo just jumped in and elbowed it out of the way, and that's kind of the way it stayed recently. So there aren't any socks to share at the moment. Okay, I think that's all the whips and all the sort of knitting that I've done or been doing. I'm going to move on to the October Old and New Cowl winner now. Just have a little drink. And I'm sure all of you watching know, and if you're a new viewer and you don't know, we've done a cowl this year that's run through the whole of 2018, the Old and New Cowl, where basically you use old yarn from your stash and knit a pattern that's new to you. And we've been drawing a prize every month, and there have been so many fabulous things knitted, so much stash has been liberated, some of it quite deep stash, and it's been really, really nice to see everyone joining in with that particular knit along. And October was a bumper month. There were lots and lots of finished objects in the thread. I think the most we've ever had. So that was really, really good to see. As usual, I asked the random number generator on my phone to pick a winner, and my phone picked out post number 20, which is Dariona. And Dariona is from Waterford in Ireland, so congratulations to you. And she knitted her socks as part of the Strictly Socks knit along as well, so double dipping is absolutely fine. And she knitted some lovely socks out of some fondant fibre yarn that she'd had in stash for quite some time. So congratulations, Dariona. I hope I'm saying your Ravelry name correctly. And she has won a little project bag made by me. It's a little sock size, and this is using some of the Liberty quilting cotton range with a linen bottom, and it's nice and soft and flexible to pop in another bag with your sock whip in. And there's a little skein of naturally dyed yarn just because it matched the fabric so beautifully. So if you can contact me on Ravelry or on Instagram and let me know your details, and I'll get your prize sent out to you very, very quickly. The prize for November, I did share it last time, but I'll show it to you again. I've opened up a new thread for November's finished objects, and it's a lovely skein of Craft House Magic yarn, and I thought this would be an ideal prize for the November or did I? No, I did say that. Yeah, I did. So I'm just doubting which way round I was doing the prizes. I'll double check back just in case I've got it wrong. But this is Merry Christmas Everyone, and it's by Ellie of Craft House Magic, and it's her sock weight yarn, 425 meters, superwash merino and nylon, and that is going together with this lovely little sock sack from Julie at Suffolk Socks, part of her yarn tart range. So I thought they'd make a really nice prize. But I am having severe doubts about which way round I was doing the prizes, so I will double check that. So don't hold me to anything just yet. So those are the winner, obviously Dariona for October and prize for November. So I spoke to you all last time about projects that you're not really feeling the love for, and that possibly need to go to the frog pond and reappear as something else, like this did. And I'm so pleased I did that, because this yarn never ever wanted to be the cardigan that I planned it to be, and I think it's very happy now that it's an Ingalls. So I showed you my door sweater, which is this one. It's a pattern by Amy Miller, a lovely pattern. It's this, and I was knitting it in this John Arbon Knit by Numbers, and I've done both sides, front and back, huge amount of rib, tubular bind off, spent ages, but just really wasn't feeling the love. So this is going to be frogged. This will be unravelled, balled up and put back into stash for the time being. I have been tempted to look at a couple of replacement patterns for it, but I think I might need time just to pop it back into stash and just wait until I'm really sure, because I don't want to make the same mistake again. So I did put a new thread in our Ravelry group for Finish Off Frog, and I put that in there, and everyone from the comments after the last YouTube video and comments in that thread, it was a resounding frog it. So everybody agrees that yeah, it does definitely need to be frogged and become something else in the future. So that is definitely going to happen. And the other project that I had was the zigzag scarf that I was knitting as well, and I'll briefly show it to you. I don't want to just keep doing the same things as I did last episode and bore you to tears, but just so that you can remember, it was this one, this zigzag scarf. And the general consensus on that one was to finish it, and I do agree to a certain extent, but I have seen there's a new pattern on Ravelry by Andrea Mowry called the Shift Cowl or the Night Shift Cowl. There's two versions of it, but one of them uses I think a sport weight yarn, and somebody had done a lovely version of it using the same yarn that I've got in this project here, and it's really made me think, do I want to just frog this and use it to make that particular cowl? So I'm on the fence about this one. So this I'm not going to frog just yet. I'll just ponder on it a bit more. But if you want some help, if you want the opinion of people in the group on what you should do with your project, if you're in a similar dilemma, then pop a photo and tell us a bit about it in that thread, and yeah, we'll have a look and see what we think, whether you should finish or frog it. So it's just a little bit of fun. I am planning some new projects, even though I really should finish off some of the things I've got, but at the moment it's just the perfect time of year to just relax and knit, you know, obviously when you don't have anything else to do, but just to make the time for relaxing and knitting. So I have no fear in having lots and lots of whips over the winter months. So I am planning to knit one of the knit vent patterns. Helen Stewart has knit vent every year, and it's a series of patterns in the run up to Christmas which are ideal either as gifts or for yourself, and it's just a really nice tradition, and the patterns in previous years have been stunning, so I didn't hesitate in signing up for that. And the first pattern is called Dust of Snow, and it's a wrap. I haven't printed it. I'm going to attempt to show it to you on my iPad. I don't know if it's going to cause a lot of flickering on the screen. I'm going to attempt to show it to you. So it's the, oh, it doesn't like it. there we go. It's the Dust of Snow wrap, and it's the first pattern in Knit Vent 2018. It's absolutely gorgeous, and basically what Helen's done is she's utilised lots and lots of mini skeins, which you can either wait until you start your advent calendar for this year if you're getting a yarny advent calendar, or you can use one if you've still got some from last year, or just ends of other projects like I'm doing for my snow day cowl. So there's lots and lots of options for knitting the pattern. It's a very long wrap style pattern, and it's held throughout double with mohair, so it's going to have a beautiful halo. So I think that's one that I would like to get on the needles, possibly not immediately. I think I'd like to have it sort of like as an after Christmas knit, sort of when things have all calmed down. So I'm on the lookout for some mohair, and also need to spend a little bit of time going through stash and just finding, I've got quite a lot of minis as well, but maybe not enough minis that would coordinate. I might have to add some bits and pieces left over from other projects, but I'm sure there's lots of yarn that I've got in stash that I can use for that particular pattern. So that is definitely on my list to do. I am attending the festival, I think it's festival it's called, next weekend on Saturday, which is in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. I'm just calling it the Hitchin Wool Festival in my head. So I will be attending that, and I will be on the lookout for some mohair while I'm there. So it will be, and I must try and be a little bit restrained and just buy some mohair and not buy anything else. But that doesn't normally end very well for me. So if you see me there, I do plan to wear my Ingalls. So if you see the lady with the mohair, buying the mohair, wearing the Ingalls, that's me. So do come and say hi. It'd be lovely to meet any of you that watch the podcast. And hopefully it'll be a really nice day. Another project that I would like to get on the needles as well, and this literally only occurred to me while I was pottering about the house this morning. I went on Instagram, as you do, and I saw a little post from Antonella of Cozy Posy Yarn Company, and she was having a little bit of a down moment, as we all do sometimes. Someone had been a little bit unkind about some of her yarn, and she was asking for a little bit of love back. And I thought, how could anyone not like Antonella's yarn? It's absolutely stunning. And it reminded me that I do have 3 skeins of her yarn in stash, which I had bought, and I have shared these on the podcast before, but I just wanted to share a little bit of love for Antonella today. And these are Cozy Posy Yarn Company, and this I've bought for a Birds of a Feather shawl, which is another Andrea Mowry pattern, and these are all in her rose quartz colourways. So the 2 main skeins are her Cozy Soft Sock Base, which is 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. It's a really plump, beautiful yarn in this beautiful rose quartz colourway with the lovely speckles, and the coordinating silk mohair skein as well. So do go and share, have a look at Antonella's yarn, have a look at her Instagram, show her some love today. It's those little acts of kindness, I think, that make us all feel a little bit better, and we all need it from time to time. And yeah, it was a good nudge for me to get this out of stash and get a Birds of a Feather cast on for myself, because that is such a lovely pattern. The one I had previously that I knitted out of Fine Fish yarns, I gave to my mum because she fell in love with it, so I promised I would make this one for myself. Done a lot of talking, haven't I? Final thing I'd like to just mention is my Etsy shop, which has been very, very quiet of late. It really is a juggling act, and I know everybody's busy and everyone says they don't have a lot of time, but it's hard sometimes to find the time. But I do really, really enjoy making bags and popping them in my Etsy shop and sewing, and you know, I really do enjoy doing it. So I need to make some time, because I have bought some lovely Christmas fabric to make some Christmas project bags, which I'm going to share with you. My thought is, if I share it on the podcast, then I'm more likely to actually get it done. So this fabric has got the cutest little mice on in a little woodland setting. I really like the colours of this, the soft aquas and the brown and little hints of pink. And the lining of the bag will be these little Christmas peppermint candies. And I thought as a really nice base on the bag will be this gold. I don't know if the light is picking it up. This is an Essex linen with the gold thread through it, so it's a really nice, I just thought it was a nice combination of fabric. So I will hopefully get in those sewn up in time to get them in the shop ready if anyone would like one of those for their Christmas knitting. So I think that is probably everything that I've got to share with you today. I'm just amazed that I came back in 2 weeks and had a chat, and I'm really pleased that I did. And I've loved sharing my new jumper with you, and I'm going to enjoy wearing it next week at Hitchin. So yeah, so I'm going to leave you all there, and I will try and get back in a couple of weeks time and share with you what happened at the Hitchin Wool Festival, and share my Libby Johnson finished object with you, and anything else that I've got done. So in the meantime, happy knitting and take care. Bye.